Hello, beautiful peace guardians, love makers, peace channel here online. And today we have a guest that we would like to honor, represent, and invite to share their beautiful wisdom. Reverent Brianna Lynn is here in the house, a beautiful sister that has been a peace guardian, first of all, an activist, and guardian of human rights, guardians of rights of women, this planet Earth, ancient medicine, ancient ritual, and one of the most impressive priestess I've ever met in my life. What an honor to have you.
Oh, thank you. It's so wonderful to be here.
Yeah. I know some parts of your story, and we all have a deep story to share. Each of us, is living this experience of life in such a unique way, and walking the path of, exploration and learning about life. None of us know. We can only try to our best to live the experience that is gifted to us. And in this life path, there's many different experiences that come our way, and today we have an absolutely very diverse sets of circumstances in our world that actually many of those circumstances are inviting our attention, and and I've been in this path of trying to understand what is worth my attention, and where do I place it, what is powerful, what is important right now, what are the tools that can support us to stay grounded, to stay in our body, and to speak our truth and authenticity in a peaceful, graceful way. What have you learned about peace on your path, Brianna?
It's a great question, and I love the way that you preface this, and hello to all the peace guardians. It's such an honor to be here, and you can call me Brianna or Bri, but my official title is Reverend Brianna Lynn. And my work, my journey, my studentship, more than anything, being a student of life, has been around going straight into the depths of what peace isn't, really understanding within myself, creating conflict, creating challenges, have a past of disordered eating, growing up in poverty situations, really challenging myself in these ways, while also having access, being from the United States, growing up in Southern California, the daughter of a farmer, but having access to higher education, having access to being able to take out loans. So acknowledging the both and of my experience, and from a very young age being drawn to the story of all of humanity, and the story of love that connects us all, and the story of suffering that connects us all. And I had this incredible fascination with not only the love, but also this suffering, this link of suffering that we all carry, whether we've grown up in the most luxurious of situations or the most impoverished. We have this spectrum of availability between the suffering and the love. And for me, what we were discussing earlier in the day when we were just chatting as sisters, as friends, for my own inner peace, it can't be just the inner work. And for my own humanity and integration with the world around me, it can't just be interacting with the world around me. From the ages of about 15 to 23, I spent most of my time in academia as an activist, studying, learning socioeconomics. I have my master's in peace education from the United Nations University for Peace, and got to travel and understand. And I also gave up a lot of my peace in efforts to make it better out there. Then at the early 20s, I found plant medicine, went deep into Vipassana, meditation, yoga teacher training, went in and started to cultivate an inner garden, an inner reserve, a relationship with the internal world. And it's like my pendulum swung completely the other way. I kind of left the activist world, left the academic world, and where I'm at now in my later 30s is I'm starting to see that true peace is that cultivation of that inner garden, daily meditation practice, daily being in nature, moving my body, breath, sound, movement, touch outside every day, and being aware of what is happening in the world around me, educating myself through reliable sources, being an activator, not so much an activist, but really how can I activate myself to understand what's happening in the world, and how can I participate in a way that activates inner peace for world peace, right? So it is participating in fundraisers, it is showing up to activist situations, it is being an artist that cares about the world, but not at the exclusion of my inner world. And my inner world can't take away from the interaction with the 3D reality. What I see a lot of times, and what I have gone into myself, I'll just speak for myself, is I went straight into the inner world and just focused on spirit. And then I went straight into the activist world and just focused on the external world. But it's actually the dance between the two that I believe that my own peace, our family, our village, and ultimately our world will find that dance with peace again. It's an inner game, but it's also a participation in the world at large, in our communities, and the larger conversation that's required of our souls.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm aware that lots of your story has also kind of like evolved in the parallels of learning about woman's body, and all of the history of the woman's evolution, with our voice, with our expression, and the way we move in the world as the peace guardians and the peacekeepers. And I think the also important word that a lot of peace kind of was disrupted in the times when women were accused in some stuff of the witchcraft and all of that thing. So as a woman, how did you relate it to that peace within you, from that experience of all the stories of a women's rights and oppression, and how did you come to, where did you land with all of that story? And would you share more about your inspiration of women's rights and the witchcraft and the ancient powers and ancient tools and ancient wisdom for that peace guardianship? Would you share more of that story?
Absolutely. I think my fascination with history, her story, their story, our story, right? This, what is actually the pulse of humanity that we play out in these cycles. And starting to understand that everything from the way my body circulates estrogen through her, to the way that there's the rise and fall of apocalypsis and the new age is upon us, and then there's a fall and a regeneration of civilizations. This has happened multiple times throughout human history. And what I found when I just started studying like human history, not just European history, not just Asian history, but actually looking at the rhythms and the patterns, the way that humans have moved, is that there's always a beginning, there is a catharsis, there's a deep breakthrough, and then there's a decline in every civilization. And what we are upon right now is a catharsis. What we are upon right now is an awakening, is a realization of self, and a new iteration of what's possible for civilization. When I started to pull on this thread of the identity of woman, and specifically being a white presenting woman, I was really interested in my Indigenous heritage. I'm mostly of Scottish, of Great Britannia, and the lineage that I was looking for came from this desire to connect to my Indigenous roots, to know my songs, to understand where my ancestors came from. I'd been sitting with the Native American church, with peyote and the shuar and the secopaya in Ecuador with ayahuasca, and what kept showing up were my ancestors, and they were faceless. And I had no names. I had no songs. I had no patterns. I had no, they kept asking me for weavings. I was like, I don't weave. I had no drumming. I had no idea how they drummed. And it was this longing and deep, the circling of my depression from my youth started to make sense. I remember I told a therapist once, like, this is totally elitist for me to say, I just want to acknowledge this. I almost wish I had been hurt more as a child, because my depression would have made sense to me. And when I started to speak about this angst, specifically to Americans, specifically to white presenting Americans, second, third, fourth, fifth generation Americans, the term that I came up with was cultural refugee. That whether we were the colonizer or ran out because of war, we've lost connection with the way that we prayed pre-Romans. My people, the Celts, and specifically the Caini, Etruscans, and the Sabines, which are different tribal names that I've been able to trace back through my family lineage, we're deeply connected to the earth through sound, through breath, through movement, through touch. And while most of those practices have been completely annihilated through the Roman expansion and then later the British colonization, the piece that I started to get in touch with was, how did that happen and why? And the big shift in Roman civilization from just taking over to annihilating indigenous traditions happened with the creation of and the spreading of Christian doctrine, specifically around 300 AD. Between about 900 AD and 1700 AD, we see the largest hunt of any type of human on our planet, and it was called the witch hunt. And there's estimates of anywhere between 15,000, 80,000, up to 3 million women specifically were hunted. And the way women were targeted was if they spoke out against the Roman army, specifically against the war, if they had a drum or a rattle in their house, or if they had any herbs at all in their house. And so we lost a connection to the plant medicines of Europe, across Europe. Remember, the Roman Empire went from Scotland all the way to Turkey, right? Even into places in Russia and down into the Mediterranean, into northern Africa. This was the second largest empire that the world has ever seen in terms of the span across the amount of land that they held and the amount of diverse tribes and peoples that they conquered. And for the first part of the Roman colonization, they didn't integrate them into their spirituality. But once Christianity was developed, and the threats from the Ottoman Empire and the threats from the African tribes from the south and the threats from the Vikings from the north, Constantine III knew that he needed to create a united front. And so he created a united religion, and then from there institutionalized it that anyone who wasn't Christian could be prosecuted in numerous different ways. And specifically, they went after the women because women are the first ones to complain about their sons and husbands going away to war. It's not that we were witches. It's not that magic was real per se. We weren't levitating in the forest. We were literally collecting mushrooms, both edible and psychedelic, but mostly edible. Most of the witches who were burned were pretty mundane. Midwives.
Just women.
Just women.
Just women.
With a voice.
Exactly.
Women with a voice.
Wow.
And so there's this, you know.
I have like a whoosh.
Yeah. And there's a lot of romanticization around what the witch was and all the priestesses. And I'm sure the priestesses were murdered, but the majority of people who were killed were just normal women. Just normal women who were finding their voice, finding their way, young women. They were allowed to be raped. Once they were identified as a witch, they were allowed to be completely naked. They were allowed to be raped, that they were no longer considered human. They were considered below human. They were considered a consort of the devil, and therefore anything that you did to them didn't count because they weren't human. So the amount of torture that women went through before they were even killed was unspeakable. They kept these women alive anywhere between a couple weeks and a couple years before they were murdered, before they were massacred. And it was everything from a single woman to an entire family. There were men who were also murdered, and there were those who are gender non-identified or gender nuanced who were also murdered. Pretty much anyone who stood out as a threat to the status quo could be boxed into this title of witch. And where that word comes from, there's a lot of different lineages and a lot of different, you know, etymologies that say, oh, it's this word or it's that word or it's that word. But the way I've reclaimed it, because it is a reclamation to say I am a witch, it's wise, intuitive, teacher, counselor, healer. That as a woman, as a human, as a whatever you want to identify, to stand in your wisdom, to use your intuition, to be willing to teach, counsel, and heal with it, at that time would have made you a witch. And to claim that word now has a lot of different, there's the coolness to it, right? There's the cool aspect of like, I burn my sage and I sit in ceremony and I sing my drums, but it literally is like, can you be a human being who's willing to use their voice against the status quo? Those were the ones who were targeted. Even if you didn't have the herbs, even if you didn't have the drums, even if at the point all you could do was just stomp your foot, if you were using your voice against the status quo, you could be easily boxed into the category of witched and annihilated. This is family dramas developed because a family who had a feud with another family could accuse them of witchcraft, and if they had proof, there are so many historical documents that show how this word was used to take down people, but specifically targeting women. So as a white presenting woman, to know this part of our history is very important, especially at this time where we're talking about systems of oppression and racism and sexism and ableism and genderism. It's important for us to understand where we came from and how that subdued the feminine voice. We understood that if we subdued ourselves, we wouldn't get killed. 300 to about 17, I think the last witch hunts were in the late 1800s. So almost 1,000 years, right? No, over 1,000 years that women were specifically targeted if they spoke out against the status quo. So women specifically, but this is for all beings, when there's that fear of speaking out against something that is an injustice, to connect to that lineage of the witches, to connect to the ones who were burned, raped, tortured, drowned, murdered, skin scraped off with seashells. Look up the story of Hypatia if you want to learn about a witch who was just a mathematician in Alexandria, one of the top mathematicians, meteorologist, incredible human being who helped us so great in geometry. She was burned alive, kept alive, then her skin was scraped off with seashells. She was kept alive, and then she was burned again. Publicly. And she was a university level professor. People came from all around the world to learn from her. And the movement of, I don't even like to call them Christians, but utilizing Christian philosophy to manipulate people, because I have dear friends who identify as Christians and I honor your spirituality, but to manipulate something like the love of Yeshua, to get people to hate and murder against someone who's using their voice as a critique and a way to look at the status quo, which is what we're meant to do as humans, as artists. To have peace within, we have to name what is not peace. To have true peace in our hearts, we have to be able to name the spaces where peace does not exist, or we will hold that in our body. If we are not naming in our immediate villages and in the planet what is causing the disjunction in peace, then we ourselves will take on the disease to compensate for us not speaking what's not being spoken. So that time where you feel like, okay, here's a truth and I'm ready to speak it, and that shake comes, I call it like God's getting ready, or like orgasm's about to come, right? Like the mouthgasm is ready to elicit itself. There's also that peace in our ancestry. And for different peoples, we've all been oppressed in different ways, but specifically for white presenting women, to understand that for over 1,000 years, we were hunted any time that we decided to use our voice. Just honor that shake as like our ancestors reminding us, like, hey, this could be dangerous, and we can just let them know, like, we're safe now. We're safe now. We're ready now. We're ready now. And we're not always safe, right? Like our voice isn't always going to be something that's celebrated. Our voice isn't always going to be something that's legal or allowed or even wanted in the space. And so for us to start to validate ourselves, for us to validate each other, and to understand that his story, her story specifically, their story and our story, really has resonance in our bodies, not only from our own DNA and our own family lineages, but all human beings on the planet, that we share one organism. So we carry this as part of our story. So when we go to speak, you know, for those who, in the United States who are slave lineage, they deal with that feeling of being whipped on their back, even though it was their ancestors. For the Asian Americans, they were brought over as slaves for the railroad and derided and completely ostracized for hundreds of years. You know, so each identifying group of people has almost like a collective oppression, and then we as humanity have a collective oppression, and then we as individuals get to learn how to not propagate those traumas within each other. So specifically for women in these female bodies who present as women, who present as white, to understand that we're part of a collective oppression, we're not alone, so it's important to listen first, and second, to utilize our voice from that place of, even though she shakes, I'm going to utilize that shake as a way to say thank you to my ancestors and say it anyway.
For the past few days, I've been, going around and asking specifically women a question: what's more powerful, silence or voice? And both of them are equally powerful. So I do understand the power of silence and power of cultivating the momentum and power of cultivating the expression through the inner temple. And as equally as silence is powerful, the voice is powerful. Yes. and you know, having the discernment for the both and understanding in which case what is meant to be held.
Yes.
And that is peace for me, is inner knowing, inner trust in my inner silence and listening to it, and inner trust in whenever it's the voice wants to come through and the song wants to be sang.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. There's something beyond like masculine, feminine dynamics that's coming through, and I like that, like silence or speak, right? Like inner peace, world peace, like inner focus, outer focus, the inhale and the exhale, right? And they both have their place. We can't just inhale all the time. We can't just exhale all the time. And especially for, I'll speak specifically to American white presenting women because I am one. For us to learn how to listen first, listen deep within, and listen to others. Because we grew up in a culture where we were competing with white men, where that was seen as like the ultimate. We were so close to being on the top. We were just one click over gender, and we could have been on the top of the entire planet, right? We could have been Biff and the planet. And so and it's my journey, because I'm a talker, and I like to be right, and I'm so smart, and I've got so much information to share. But to like actually listen to your question and where it comes from first, and not just wait until I can speak again, but actually absorb what you're saying, has been a practice and continues to be a practice to this day for me, because of the way I was raised in academia and the way I was brought forward and applauded for when I like pushed and like was like, I call it Biff, like that like football player in me that just wants to get to the front line and like, be best.
Like activist, that's an activist archetype. It's like I am here to act, right? And speaking is a method of action, right? So that's holding that as a woman method of action is very, very powerful. And for some people, action is silence as well too, you know. And I guess peace is somewhere in between, right? The silence and the voice. It's somewhere where like the truth of the moment and the authenticity of the moment, and knowing what is true to the moment. And what I'm hearing you also by like participating in conversation, and by participating in conversation, actually science sometimes even better friend as well, as in the silence we get to hear one another too.
Truly, like let it land in my body when you say that, even like, As you were speaking to, like I saw a shoreline, right? Like it never arrives at the same point. It's not like this amount of silence and this amount of talk. It's the
water.
Living, breathing entity of being radically alive in this moment with you as the one who I'm receiving and giving to in this conversation. Being willing to watch the shoreline instead of like, okay, now it's my turn to do, and this is the information I'm sharing. And not that that is bad in any way, but for me and my experience and the way that I'm learning how to learn and teach, is aliveness is more important to me than being right. Being connected is more important to me than being right. Finding harmony is more important than being right. And justice is what just is. So that ability to name what just is as like a thread that weaves through it all, instead of fighting for justice, naming it and becoming one with the just is, and then we become emanations of that. And then from that place, when we speak, kind of like when you channel the peace channel, right? It's this emanation of that. That's also what justice truly is. Justice is an emanation of what I believe true human nature is. Radical aliveness in this moment, not getting hijacked by our past or projected into our future. It's what just is. It's the only thing that's left.
Yes. And what comes to me, silence and voice and discernment, whatever is that in between is the balance. And peace for me is also equals balance, right? We're both, and there's kind of like, it's like an element of water a little bit for me too, because it's like flowing from one form into another, and knowing that the flow never stops, right? Learning how to like be the water, just is, right? Just is, and all of it. If it hurts here or there, within my own body system or my subconscious, or however it hurts, or something celebrates, something hurts, if it's firework inside of me, or there is a deep like stream of collapsing, you know, maybe something has to die, you know, and being okay, justify it all okay, it's all good. It's all good, the mantra that been also supporting my inner peace. It's all good. It's all good.
Thank you.
One more thing that also, as you were sharing, that came alive to me is what you said, that we forgot how to pray, and we forgot perhaps your relationship to our prayer. And you know, peace question is also like is a frequency, you know, and that meant to be invocated perhaps or not, or just recognized or found or remembered or felt within our body system. So peace is the frequency that is, it just is. And is an opportunity to find that balance in between of yin and yang, because it's not about finding which way is better. They are not better on its own. It only works when everything exists, and being okay with what exists. And the power of prayer. So the tool, what I'm hearing out of all of it, is learning how to pray. Therefore, learning how to use our voice in form of invocation, perhaps, form of naming it, yet learning how to name it from a perspective. I am naming it, and I'm also, as I name it, I transmute it.
Yes.
So I pray not for safety or support, and I could pray for that. But what I'm saying, I see bigger power in praying as I'm saying that. I'm invocating what is coming to life.
Absolutely. I mean, your body just shifted so much to the energy of like, I'm praying for support, and then like the energy. Because the words are almost the symbols that we put on the energy. What I'm learning, prayers, spells, incantations, mantras, whatever words that you want to call it, but that process, when we enter into that place where we recognize that what lives in me lives in everything else, and I want to talk to that. Okay? God, orgasm, nature, goddess, whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
That which is in me and that which is greater than me, I want to talk to you.
Yes.
And I want to talk to you, and I want to call in what I desire and what I see possible through the power of the energy in my body and voice. Because it's when you get into the energy that evokes a frequency, right? Like a radio frequency. And when we give that radio frequency, that's what comes back to us. So prayer, it's almost like a workout gym to be in the frequency of what is desired or what is being called forth, right? So yes, it is. It can be a petition. It could be, you know, I desire, and my invitation, the practice is like, be in that desire as this. Thank you for giving us this day. Thank you for giving us peace in the Ukraine. Thank you for giving all the children food. Thank you for making it available that every single body gets to live healthy until the end of its days. Thank you for bringing humans to their full potential. Like, I would just invite us all to be in the possible gratitude, and to be in that frequency of gratitude when we're praying. Specifically from the Christian indoctrination during the Constantine time, there was a groveling energy that was brought onto the planet that didn't quite exist in the same way before that time. One of the things that the Celtic priestesses, they were called the Bandrui, which is directly in my female lineage. What they were really well known for doing was their screaming and the ululations, the very loud pitched screaming, and that was the way they would pray with their drums at the top of their lungs on a hill. And it was to wake people up, or to go into war, or to harvest, or to bring in the fish, whatever it was. And it was a creation of energy. And that kind of prayer that wakes up the spirit, that would be, for me, is one of the most powerful ways to get myself into peace and get myself into the frequency that I want to like put on as my body oil or as my clothes for the day, is that inundation of life.
Yeah. I believe it's Rumi's quote, pray as a lover, not as a beggar.
Yes.
You know? And in Christianity, prayers also is like, oh Lord, save me, or I have sinned, or all of the different things of how I could have done something wrong, and I have to like reconcile myself with the energy out there, and like and not sure, like, you know, like, or is it okay, is it not, or people told me that's not, and you know, and now I understand, like, it's all my choice how to pray. God is directly connected to me, and I love you, God. I love God in you. I love God, everything is as it is, and I would like to make love to life, to be that orgasmic thing, and therefore I know that energy will reactivate and cultivate all of those frequency of joy and ecstasy. I would not be afraid to use that word, like ecstasy, right, of being, because it's available.
Yes.
Just because it's available. And as frequency of peace and as frequency of ecstasy, I feel like I know they're both available.
Yes.
It's a choice to tap in. So yeah, from the prayer ways, is there any particular, like, practical, easy way to pray for you that you find very powerful, and that is very takes just a little bit of time, yet brings a lot of difference in your life? Is there a way like that?
Yes. Breath, sound, movement, and touch. And I'll send you the video, and if you want to include it in the link in this, I have a full practice that I teach people called BSMT. We call it basement, or moving the BS mountain. Breath, sound, movement, touch. Getting in touch with the breath, learning how to make sounds, learning how to move the body, and literally touch yourself. So before the words even come, starting to just get in touch with the justice, like what just is in the body, what's actually happening, what wants to be moved and transmuted. And then from that place being like, okay, here's my words, because I actually am here now. The issue with so much, whether it's prayer or mantra, it's like we're somewhere and we're like trying to get to somewhere else, versus claiming that I'm all here and I want to be all here. I choose to be all here. I don't want to be anywhere else. This is exactly where I want to be. And from this place, I am commanding in the energy. Commanding is exactly the word it is. Kindly, but it's commanded, because this energy is what lives us. There needs to be no groveling on our feet. We have the energy of life in us. Life, orgasm, God, whatever you want to call it. And it's in everything. And when we command that energy with our words, it's very powerful. But I've found that breath, sound, movement, touch helps us move and digest the emotions that get in the way, or start to create the story of not enough, or what the fuck am I doing? Oh, I'm starting to pray, it's weird. Or like, I'm not enough, how dare I? I'm holding this grief, or I'm holding this rage, or I'm holding this anger. And those are all okay emotions. But to be able to digest them before we go into that holy of holy place is what I would invite anyone that I sit with as a peer, as a student, as a teacher, is like, let's cultivate what it feels like in our bodies to call in what it is that we really want. And doing that through they're ancient technologies taught by traditions, earth-based traditions all across the globe, including my own lineage. The breath work, sound, music, vibration, movement of any sort, and touch, physical touch of each other and physical touch of self. These are ways to help calm the nervous system, regulate the nervous system, bring the energy up or down, and invite in new possibility. So ancient technologies for prayer.
I would like to invite you to invocate or name or call in whatever wants to come through. But before that, I would like to give our Peace Guardians an opportunity to follow your work and where to find you. Would you please share where to find you, where people can find practices and offerings that you have cultivated? Would you please share?
Amazing, thank you. Yeah, theearthtemple.com. Theearthtemple.com is my main website. And then at Rev Brianna Lynn on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. There's other things that I don't check, but those are the three that I do. Rev Brianna Lynn, and it'll be in the show notes, I'm sure. So they can come follow me there.
Brianna,
Yes, my love.
we're an honor to come into connection, into cultivation of this peace frequency together. I am very honored. Thank you very much for. I already feel lots of transmission that happened through my body just by who you are. So I would like our guest, the Peace Guardians, to receive an invocation from you. Would that be something that you would like to offer?
Yeah, it's
wonderful.
my favorite. It's my favorite. I love to pray. Oh, Thank you, thank you, thank you, life. Thank you, life. Thank you, life. Thank you, life. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for this life. I pray for more life for myself, for my sister Rina here, for sweet Rue behind the camera, for all the beings that are right here at the Mother Temple, this beautiful land that we stand on. This is Tongva land. I say thank you to the indigenous of this land. Originally, I pray to the indigenous of my own DNA. I call in the directions and the elements to guide us now and always. The north, the earth, our physical body, the south, the fire, all of that burns that within us. The west, the waters, all of our emotions, the east, the air that we breathe, all the ancient ones. We call upon you above, below, and within. We ask that we stand here more in this moment. We allow ourselves to open to this moment. We breathe with gratitude, and we bring along all that we are, leaving nothing behind. And remembering that what we are is infinite life, that which lives us and that which is greater than us. May we connect to this in every moment. We call forward the peace in ourselves. That is our home base, our natural state, who we truly, truly are. Finding that within ourselves, we call that forth on our planet at this time, specifically for the places of active conflict. We know that those lands have peace. We ask for the corners of the houses that are not bombed to start to sing their songs. Let the trees that are still standing start to shout to every human being, every bird that is there, I'm still alive. May every cat, dog, horse that is able to get out of the rebel start to show that life will go on. Life will continue. Life wins. Love wins. And may this hit the heart of every human being that's in conflict, inner conflict, external conflict, conflict in their families, conflict between countries. May they see that tree. May they see that cat. May they see that corner of the house that wasn't bombed. And remember that life goes on. Life continues. Life is eternal. Eternal life is ours, and we are eternal life. May we remember, and may we activate the leaders and the corporations that are responsible for creating conflict in order to make money. May we activate them with the love of what it means to be at peace, because the war outside is just a reflection of the war that's inside. So may this message, may this work that we are doing go to reach our brothers and sisters and others who are in positions of power to push those buttons and say attack. May they be touched by the possibility of that last tree standing. And remember that they too are eternal life, and that they're here to breed more life, not take it. That the ultimate joy of being human means to give more life, whether it's a garden or a child or a painting or a poem. That when we give more life, we are in our dharma, we are in our purpose. And anyone who is here taking life or destroying will inherently destroy themselves through their own mental, physical, emotional anguish. So we pray for them with compassion. And that they may be touched by this possibility of peace that also exists in them. May they in this moment feel the peace that's already in them. May they in this moment feel the orgasm of life that's already in them. May they remember, may they be not able to sleep because they are so filled with joy that they no longer need to externalize their wars on the planet anymore. May they awaken with glee that they no longer need to extract the blood of our mother, the petroleum from our planet. May they awaken to the knowing that every animal, every human child, every human woman, man, and gender nuanced being gets to have full human rights. May they awaken now. For all beings across all timelines, across all planets, we offer this prayer, this invocation, this spell casting forward. Thank you, 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 thank you. Amen, amin, aho, ashe, hosha. And so it is.